the hadith that Imam al-Nawawi radiallahu anhu relates in his Arba'een, which is really a hadith that is a summation of the Islamic teaching, and it was a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ is questioned by Jibreel, and all of you are familiar with the hadith. But the last section of the hadith deals with an issue about which really is the realm of the interior, or the realm of the heart, and that is the idea of ihsan. And interestingly enough, in the Islamic tradition, the sciences of the heart were really a science that was studied alongside the other sciences. So in other words, a student of the Islamic teaching would not simply study fiqh, which is concerned with the rules of the sharia, in how to perform the wudu, in how to buy and sell, and the activities of daily lives. This is the arena of fiqh, or the science of jurisprudence. The science of the doctrine or the dogmatic aspects of iman is, some call it kalam or usul ad-din, which is the principles, and they're really intellectual principles upon which the aqidah is based. And that is the realm of what's generally known as iman. But then there's a third aspect of the Islamic teaching which goes under the category of ihsan, and this has been called by various scholars different things. The early scholars called it the ilm al-suluk, or the idea of being salik. And the book that Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya radiallahu anhu wrote, called Madarij al-Salikin, deals mainly with this whole idea of what is suluk. And unfortunately, I think in many ways, because of what are known as the ghulat al-Sufiyya, or some extreme groups of people that have been termed Sufiya, or better termed Mutasawwifa, have in many ways maligned the sciences of ihsan. And people, like the English have a proverb, say, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, as a kind of reaction to maybe some of these superstitious or folkloric manifestations of Islam, have tended to ignore the extremely rich intellectual tradition that exists in the psychology of the nafs and in the psychology of the human heart, and how the diseases of the heart are nurtured and made well. And so I think really it's very relevant in our time that the Muslims once again begin to examine this rich literature, and really start thinking about these things, because it's an element that in many ways does not exist in a lot of the current movements, Islamic movements. Although the idea of tazkiyah and tarbiyah is certainly a concern, the emphasis is sometimes often not given the degree of importance that I think is absolutely necessary for it, because what my own study has revealed to me is that basically every Islamic revivalist movement, and by the nature of Islam, it is a deen that revives itself. The Prophet ﷺ said that this deen would be renewed by renewers, and this happens continuously, and it has in the past and will continue to do so in the future. But what I have noted in the little research that I've done personally and heard from others who've done more extensive research, is that really every Islamic movement of any worth that has had some sustainability in the history of Islam was based on really two foundational principles. The first one is the revival of the knowledge of Islam, which has to do with the outward sciences, Ihya ulum ad-din, which is interesting that Abu Hamid al-Ghazali radiallahu anhu, who many, in fact it's almost really by the ijma' of the ummah, he is considered to be the mujaddid of the 6th century of Islam. I mean, this is almost without argumentation, and extraordinary figure who had a massive impact on the Muslims during his own lifetime and after that, and of whom really myriad scholars have benefited extensively from his work. And I know that recently there has been criticism of Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, and certainly from the area of hadith, and people saying that he's weak in hadith. And I think it's a grave disservice to the Imam, because while every book other than the Book of Allah has mistakes in it, and this is something completely accepted by all of the scholars of Islam, there is not a single book on the earth that does not contain mistakes in it except the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah would not allow any book other than His book to be perfect, because Allah alone is perfect. وَالْكَمَالُ لِلَّهِ. And so any scholar who writes a book ultimately will have mistakes in that book, and it doesn't matter how great that scholar is. And so to focus on the mistakes of the Imam and to not benefit from the extraordinary revivification of the Islamic teaching that he gave to this ummah is really a grave disservice. And I know, like Sheikh Nizam al-Yaqubi was telling me yesterday, who actually did his PhD on Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, that the Muslim camp tends to be on two extremes. One, people that say the Imam can do no wrong, and the other is people that criticize him. And really, the position is always the middle position in Islam, that we take from our scholars what is beneficial, and then from the scholars that came later and rectified the mistakes that those Imams made, then those mistakes are taken into consideration, and this is the nature of the Islamic teaching. So Abu Hamid al-Ghazali radiallahu anhu wrote his book Ihya Ulum ad-Din, and really it's based on, again, these two aspects, the revival of the Islamic intellectual legacy and the revival of the idea of tazkiyah or tarbiyatun nafs. And this is why the fifth book of the Imam's work deals almost specifically with the states of the self and the rectification and purification of the self and of the heart. And he was a master of this area, and it wasn't something that he understood intellectually, but he was actually somebody who was a practitioner of this riyada or this tazkiyah. And a beautiful book, which is really almost a concise summation of his whole work, is the book Ayyuhal Walad, in which he wrote to one of his students who was a scholar of his own right, and really told him what was important about the deen. And one of the things that he emphasized in that book was that if you learn knowledge and you just acquire all of this information, but you never act upon it, then ultimately you are like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ يَحْمِلُونَ التَّوْرَاةَ نعم مثل الذين حملوا التوراة ثم لا يحملونها كمثل الحمار يحمل أسفارا بئس مثل القوم الفاسقين. نعم. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the likeness of those who were given the Torah as it's heavy, it's a weighty, سَنُلْقِي عَلَيْكَ قَوْلًا ثَقِيلًا, we will thrust upon you a heavy word. And hamal indicates that it's a bearing, you have to bear the word. And so Allah says the likeness of those who were given the Torah to bear, in other words, in action, but they don't really carry it. In other words, they don't act according to it, then they're like donkeys that carry books. In other words, the information is just on the back because it's not being lived, it's not being experienced, and it's not, the responsibility of it isn't being taken upon the individual to act according to it. And so this knowledge is really of no benefit. Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali radiyallahu anhu says in his commentary on the hadith, من سرك طريقا يلتمس فيه علما سهل الله له طريقا إلى الجنة, that the one who sets out seeking knowledge, that Allah will make easy for him the path to Jannah. He says in that there are four types of scholars or people of knowledge. And this is a very important distinctions that he makes. The first, he says, is عَالِمٌ بِاللَّهِ وَعَالِمٌ بِحُجَجِ اللَّهِ. This is the one who knows Allah and knows the proofs of Allah. And he says that this man is safe in his own self, and he is a hujjah over Allah's creation. And then the next one he says is عَالِمٌ بِاللَّهِ وَجَاهِلٌ بِحُجَجِ اللَّهِ يُفِيدُ نَفْسَهُ وَلَا يُفِيدُ غَيْرَهُ. A scholar who is a knower of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but does not know the barahin or the hujjaj, the proofs that Allah has sent down, he benefits himself and he doesn't benefit other people. And then he said, وَعَالِمٌ بِحُجَجِ اللَّهِ وَجَاهِلٌ بِاللَّهِ. One who knows the proofs of Allah, and this one is somebody who has all the rules, but yet he doesn't know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he said, يَضُرُّ نَفْسُهُ وَيُفِيدُ غَيْرَهُ. He harms his own self and he benefits others. And then, so this categorization and the possibilities here is that the Imam is telling us that there are individuals who know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what he said that means